to swim anymore. I mean, I'm far past my college days at this point. If I never go a best time again, that is completely fine. I love doing this because I love the position I'm in. I love representing Palestine, and I love the sport of swimming. 65th in the U.S., but I was top 100 in the world, and I was 16 years old. So that just shows the depth of the U.S.
Disparity, yeah.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Yes.
You were top 100 in the world.
Top 100 in the world, but 65th
that is amazing
in the U.S. So it was like, I want to go to Hawaii. And my brother, he's 4 years older than me, looked at me and was like, Val, you know, I watched you do all this. I watched you make all the sacrifices. You can go to University of Hawaii and be happy and, you know, like, you'll swim well. Or you can go to an SEC school that has all the money and all the resources and go to the program that's won more national championships than any other school in program history and be the best you can be.
Wow.
And
so Auburn is like the Kentucky for men's basketball, essentially.
We're a blue blood of swimming. There's 5 of us. So I was in an outside lane and no one had ever heard of me. So I was like looking over, I was like, these girls got nothing on me. That's my thought process. I was like, these girls don't even know who I am. And I dove in and I was like, okay, I got to do this for Palestine, right? Like, I'm representing a nation now. I'm not representing myself. Yep. And I remember I touched the wall and I looked over. And I watched the other people finish. And I knew I won. And I turned around and I saw a 1 next to the Palestinian flag next to my name. And that was the proudest moment ever.
Welcome back to Beyond the Buzzer, the podcast that explores the interplay between balance, success, and adversity for high-performance athletes. Today's guest was a remarkable one. Valerie Tarazi, the Olympic swimmer and flag bearer for Palestine in the 2024 Olympics, is an incredible person with an amazing story. Not only is she a stellar athlete, but she has her master's and is exploring her PhD in supply chain. She's on the board of the Palestinian Olympic Committee and the Chair Gender Equity Committee for Asia. But beyond all that, she's a remarkable person with a lot to say. Before the episode starts, though, I have to ask you guys, please subscribe, like, comment, and share, because every time you do, it makes a big difference for us at Beyond the Buzzer. Enjoy the episode. It is 9:40 p.m. in Jordan on Wednesday 15th, 10:40 p.m. in Dubai, and 10:40 a.m. in Chicago, where our guest, Valerie Tarazi, the Palestinian flag bearer at the 2024 Olympics, is calling from. Valerie, welcome to our show. We're excited to have you.
Thank you.
Welcome to the show straight from Chi-Town.
It's a fitting day to have a Palestinian superstar on our show. We like to stay away from public events often, but this time very important to mention. Ceasefire in Gaza. Important to say that this is the beginning of the future of Palestine, hopefully, and not just something we can celebrate as the end. But this is a podcast about adversity and sports and what they mean for the regular life. So we're going to dive right in. Valerie, we prepped you on our shot clock section. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Valerie, how old were you when you started swimming?
3.
Name one athlete outside of swimming that inspires you.
Ooh, Caitlin Clark.
Favorite swimming stroke?
Breaststroke.
What is your race day routine?
Okay, very quick. I get up, I have like 20 cups of coffee, I warm up, and I have fun, and I don't focus until I get in the ready room.
Nice. Favorite sport outside of swimming?
Ice hockey.
Favorite swimmer of all time?
Oh, Bria Larson.
Favorite state in the U.S.?
Hawaii.
Best country you visited?
Palestine.
Best advice you've ever gotten?
Act like it's country club swimming and get your hand on the wall first.
One piece of advice you have for young aspiring athletes?
Swimming's supposed to be fun. Sports is supposed to be fun. So have fun with it.
Cheat meal on off day or just a cheat meal, your favorite cheat meal?
Oh, I'm a big sweets person, but I had almost a whole box of crumble cookies last night.
Ooh.
Favorite Arabic dish?
It's not necessarily Arabic, but I love mansof, and I'm a
Men's
like Kanafa. Everyone knows. Anytime I'm in an Arab country, Kanafa.
Nah. What three words would your best friends use to describe you?
Palestine, Hawaii, and swimming.
That's
That's good, Valerie.
awesome.
I want to take a second to double tap on something there. So, you mentioned 3 times in the span of 13 questions having fun, right? I feel like that's a big part of your approach to sports. For something that is so difficult and requires a high level of focus, what made you take this sort of decision to always view this as like something you have to enjoy first and foremost, and the competition comes second?
Yeah, really when I was younger, I always played sports to have fun. I loved being competitive. I had fun with my friends, but I think I was probably maybe 12 years old and I swam with this. She's a really great master swimmer. She holds 52 master world records with different age groups.
Wow.
And remember, she told my mom, she said, if Valerie ever comes home and doesn't want to swim, find out what's happening in the locker room because it's not because of swimming, it's because of the people around her. And I kind of took that to heart. I was like, oh, like swimming is swimming. I love that. It might be a different factor. And then I had an injury in college, and I remember I could walk away from the sport or I could finish out my senior year. And I remember I was like, I don't care if I don't go best time again in my life. I love swimming, and I'm going to swim and be with my friends and do it because I love it. And I had the best season of my life, and I don't have to swim anymore. I mean, I'm far past my college days at this point. If I never go best time again, that is completely fine. I love doing this because I love the position I'm in. I love representing Palestine, and I love the sport of swimming. And that's kind of where I'm at this point in my life. Is sports is supposed to be fun, and people forget that all the time.
It's crazy you mentioned that. I definitely had a period of time where I fell out of love with basketball for a while. I think we spoke about this when we met. And I think it's going to be so nice and refreshing for people to hear this and to remind themselves that ultimately, even if you are trying to pursue this as a career, like you have to love it first. Sam, was there anything you wanted to touch on from this shot clock before we go into the main conversation?
She mentioned the best country she visited was Palestine. When was your first visit to Palestine? Because I know you were born in the States.
Yeah. To be honest, we didn't think we could go to Palestine. My family and my dad went when he was really younger. I think the last time he went, he was 10 years old. We
Okay.
knew we could never go to Gaza.
Which is where you're
And
from.
we we didn't think even Palestine was an option because everything you hear on the news, you're thinking it's a hell on earth, even in the West Bank. And it's not that it isn't at some points, but that doesn't mean you can't visit. Um,
Okay.
After I won 6 medals at the Arab Championships, I got invited to Palestine, and at first my family was like, "Oh, like it's not safe," and I was like, "No, I'm going to Palestine. Like I'm representing the country. We're gonna go." And it was like the moment I was in the West Bank, I was like, "This is my home." Like it's a very weird feeling. There's no way to describe it, but um, it was August of 2023, and
Wow.
I went back days before the Olympics. It was kind of a secret trip. No one knew I was coming. I was there for less than 48 hours.
Wow.
And again, it was just a very heartwarming feeling, especially right before the Olympics, during the war, to go back. I got to walk through the old city of Ramallah too, and
Wow.
That
just
is
a
phenomenal.
very special time for me.
It's crazy because I still remember that only one time that I visited Palestine in 2009 when I went to Jerusalem. And I still remember that moment when I walked into Jerusalem. I'm like, I'm here. It's so real because, I've just been hearing about it, but I've never visited. But for the first time now, I went for those 2 days. Oh man, I really can't wait to go back. It's a phenomenal feeling.
Yeah,
Yeah, like
it's
Sam,
great.
I've only been once to Jerusalem as well, and I think the word to describe how we all feel, it's like a pipe dream, right? You get told all this time about this
Yeah.
place that you're from, and that your heritage is from, and that your grandparents are from, and you live this life thinking you're never going to go. So when you actually do get the opportunity, which all 3 of us are very lucky to have, by the way, because a lot of people don't get to go, it's amazing. I think we could actually spend the next 2 hours speaking about that, but we're going to
Oh
get there
my
eventually.
gosh.
Sam,
For
Right,
sure.
I
right,
want to keep our flow going. Why don't you go ahead and start us
right.
off?
So I want to take you back to your childhood. I know you were born in Chicago, born and raised, and you started swimming at the age of 3. When did you fall in love with swimming? Talk to us a little bit about your childhood, growing up in Chicago.
Yeah, actually, I posted this on Instagram the other day because I don't think a lot of people know this about me, but I did every sport you could imagine. Hockey,
Mm.
baseball, tennis, swimming, cheerleading, figure skating, track and field. I did it all. I'm a three-sport state champion: softball, ice hockey, and swimming. So growing up, like, yes, I did swim. I swam in the summers just at a country club pool. It was just a summer, like, recreational league. And I remember every summer I would look so forward to going back to swimming. And it was something fun. And I wasn't always the best, but I would win, like, little conference championships when you're younger, or YMCA state championship, which is a little bit different than like a club level. And so I started swimming year round when I was 9, just once a day, with my friends. And it was always because I had a really good group of coaches that didn't push me too hard. They also realized that we were kids just figuring it out. By the time I was 12 years old is when I switched to, really more competitive level. And
In swimming alone or in all across all the sports you mentioned?
well, I started travel baseball because baseball and softball were that was like my other main sport.
Baseball
I
and softball?
So I played baseball with the boys for 7 years
Wow.
Jeez.
because I was like,
Wow.
I want to be the best, and the girls weren't up to my level. Because when I was up until I was in 5th grade, I was a whole head taller than every other kid, like, in my grade. I was like this giant child. I've actually been this size since I was 14 years old.
By the way, me
Did
too,
they
which
have
is
you?
such a shame. Because I used to put people in the post in basketball, and I'm like still 5'8". I've been going since I was like 15.
Valerie, did they have you as a catcher or a pitcher?
I was a catcher.
Okay, I figured. For
And then
some
when
reason,
I
they love
switched
put
to
the big
soft
guys there.
when I
Right.
switched to softball, I switched to first base, center field. Um,
Okay.
but let me tell you, I could hit some dingers. That was like
Oh.
sometimes they did not put me. They did. I was DH. I was a designated hitter
Yeah,
because I could just
yeah,
Right.
hit
yeah.
bombs.
That's so funny.
But so really, it was like 12 years old where I kind of like I stopped playing my other sports a little bit. Like I did like tennis. I kind of dabbled in there a little bit depending on the season. But it was ice hockey, softball,
Wow.
and swimming by the time I was 12. That's when I made the transition.
But who like allowed you to play all these sports? Was it something that your parents were pushing you to try all these sports, or was it just Valerie being Valerie?
Well, my parents always said, like, you had to finish the season. Um,
Okay.
I did ballet for one little session there, and I hated it. I actually told my teacher, I was like, I don't like this, and my parents like, it's a 6-week class, like, you gotta finish it all.
Wow.
But I always went through the whole season, so that was kind of our thing. And once I got like better at sports, we had to start dropping a little bit, but my parents wanted us to do what we loved, and they supported us. So my brother was also a three-sport athlete. He was football, baseball, and ice hockey all the way up until high school. He dropped football his sophomore year of high school. But we
Okay.
both did two sports all the way up. And I think that we just had a lot of support from our family. It had us something to do. We were always busy. Like, my brother and I weren't the people to party in high school, or we had a great friend group, but our friends were the ones playing sports with us. Yeah.
So before we talk a bit more about Chicago, I think it's so interesting. You mentioned the three sports you ended up taking more seriously were obviously ice hockey, softball, and swimming. But some of the ones you dropped, like tennis and figure skating, are also very individual sports. So you've got three sports that are very much how hard can I go, right? How hard can I push myself? And two sports that are more team oriented and where you actually can't really hold yourself only accountable. What do you think the different experiences taught you? Because personally, I only ever played team sports, and I think Sam's the same.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that swimming is not an individual sport. And it's taken as an individual sport because it's based on how you do. But I was always surrounded with teammates who were very like-minded, and our goals were team goals. So one thing that USA Swimming does really well is it forces you to do team things. So I was on this club. It's called Barrington Swim Club, suburb of Chicago, and our goal was to be a bronze, silver, or gold medal club, which means you had to be one of the top 2 to 3 clubs in the state. So
Okay.
we had a group of girls and a few boys with us too that I trained with. It was a group of like 10, 15 of us. And let me tell you, we went at it every day at practice. And it wasn't like, yes, we wanted to do well for ourselves. We had our own goals, but our goal was to be a bronze, silver, gold medal club depending on the season. So like we wanted to be better for ourselves, but if one of us fell behind or one of us wasn't doing our job, like we weren't going to reach that status that we needed to do.
Okay, that's interesting.
So it like, yes, swimming is, I don't know. It's an interesting sport for sure, especially when you get
Can we,
college 13.
Abudi, can we stick to the swimming part? When you say you and your teammates go at it, can you describe to our listeners, what do you mean? How do you guys go at it in swimming? Because I know in basketball it's completely different. You're literally
Head to
going
head.
at it head to head. Swimming, how does it go? You know what I mean? Tell us more.
Yeah, I'll shift a little bit more towards college swimming because it was just a little bit more focused then.
Right.
Because we had a group of breaststrokers. There were 6 breaststrokers, and everyone was jealous of breaststroker because we were all best friends. And like again, when we went at it in the pool, we raced each other every single day.
Okay.
We were competing for the same 4 spots, but there wasn't a second where we were trying to drag someone down. We all wanted those 4
Oh,
spots, but we wish we could have 6 spots. And
wow.
every single day, like we would race for it. There were days where I had bad practices, and because I was swimming bad, I was lifting someone else up. And
Wow.
there were days too where like I wasn't having a great practice, and I had someone yelling at me, and I mean screaming across the pool, like, "You got it, Tarazi! Let's go, Val!" And like, it's a very interesting concept in college and swimming is you have people to pick you up. And our
Yeah.
coaches let that happen kind of organically. Like, yeah, my coach will be like, Belle, like, what are you doing? But
Yeah.
I don't have coaches yell at me. I have swimmers yell at me, which is way better. I'd much rather have my friends yell at me. So
Yeah.
it's
I, I
interesting.
I really can't wait when we dive in and how hard swimmers train for her to go in depth once I mean later on we're gonna go in depth
No, no,
how
no
hard
pun
you guys
intended. Let's dive in. But
exactly.
I do want to good reference there. I do want to dial it back. So again, growing up in Chicago, we know that there are a lot of Arabs in Chicago. Did this play a role in you growing up and your desire to represent Palestine, or is this something that happened a little bit later in life?
This happened later in life in the sense that it became more of a reality. Um, I grew up in Crystal Lake, Illinois. I think I'm the only Arab in Crystal Lake, Illinois. I'm sure that isn't true, but that's the perception.
Okay.
Um, it wasn't until
But sorry, just before you continue there, from a household perspective, was your family also very Arab? Do your parents speak Arabic? Your brother, or like you, is it more of wanting to connect with your grandfather?
so my grandfather actually passed away when I was less than a year old. So I
Mm,
always knew I was Palestinian. My dad knew he was Palestinian. He was baptized in our house in Gaza. Um, but that was the extent of it. No one spoke Arabic. My brother actually has light hair and crystal blue eyes. So it's very funny because my dad and I are very like dark features, got the
right.
Palestinian hair thing going, and then my
Okay.
mom and brother are like, we could be 2 separate families and no one would ever know. But yeah, it wasn't until later. I always said I wanted to represent Palestine. Like I always said that to my dad, and it was kind of like a yes, but there, how? Like, do you get a passport? Like, how does this all work? Um, and again, it wasn't until I got to college where I had the right connections, and we could talk about that later and how that kind of all played out.
So my question to you, so you were born and raised in Chicago, but did you guys have any like Palestinian roots, the way you guys were living at home? Like when did the pride of Palestinian come in to Valerie? Are we talking about at a young age or later on?
It was later on. It again, like the extent of everything is you're Palestinian.
Okay.
Like that was it. I remember in 8th grade I took this like painting class for my art class, and I did every single like project I did. There was like 6 projects throughout your semester. I did like a mask of Palestine. I did like an Olympic pool
Wow.
with the Palestinian flag in the background. Like I did all these like pieces of art with like Palestine in them. But again, like there was nothing more than that. Like I just always knew I was Palestinian. I didn't even necessarily know the Palestinian culture. It was just
Right.
kind of how things worked out later in life.
Okay. So at 16, you qualify for Olympic trials, correct?
Yes, U.S. Olympic trials.
And at that point, is it the first time you start to realize how good you can be at the sport?
Um, I would go back and say it was when I was 14.
Okay. What happened then?
So again, I trained on this club team, and your goal was to make junior nationals. Like that was everyone was working towards that. We wanted a team there. I trained an entire summer to make U.S. junior nationals in the 100 backstroke. And I dropped 6 seconds, which is a boatload of time, and I made junior nationals
Wow.
in the 100 breaststroke. And I
Wow.
went on to compete at junior nationals that summer, and I was one of 3 girls that were 14 years old at the meet, and we were the youngest ones at the meet.
Wow.
And I was like,
That,
okay, like next summer I'm coming back, and like I'm gonna final here. Like I'm gonna do this, and we're gonna make Olympic trials.
So there was
And
no intimidation, right? You had this mentality from day one, like, okay, I'm supposed to be here.
yeah, it was. My dad and I joke now, and it's not funny, but it is funny. We used to have whiteboard meetings, and I would sit down and I'd write down my short-term, midterm, long-term goals. We just had a whiteboard meeting over
I
Thanksgiving,
love
and
it.
it's like they're
Kind of
so intense.
manifesting things, no? Like,
Yeah.
it's intense, but at the same time, like there is something to be said about actually like creating your reality and writing down the things you want to see happen in your life.
Yeah, and I had big, poster board papers, like big, posted as soon as I walked out of my room. I saw that. I still have mine up from when I was a senior in high school. I just looked at it last week, and I was like, so my goal was to eat more espresso beans, um, eat more sushi, drop 5 pounds, and I don't know, there's like something else on there. And I was like looking at these goals, I was like, okay. And then I was like, why did I have these written down? I was like, oh, because those were the process goals of how I was going to make 3 A finals at US Junior Nationals that year.
Wow.
That's how I was going to win
Mm,
medals.
Wow.
So it's like, what was
wow.
your big goal and how do you get there? And then like, what were my midterm goals? Well, my midterm goals at that point in my life was to go to college and score points for Auburn. So it was like midterm and then long term. In long term, I was like, okay, I'm looking at 2020 Olympic trials.
Wow.
So you have to back into your everything. And again, my dad instilled that from a very, very young age. Is I knew what I wanted and I knew my goals, and I still follow that process today. I had my goal meeting on Monday with my coach.
I love it. So did you have a chance to actually make the U.S. team?
I did. Technically, I did. When I was 16, again, I was one of the youngest swimmers at U.S. trials in 2016. I got 65th place, and they take the top 2. I was 65th in the U.S., but I was top 100
Wow.
in the world, and I was 16
Wow.
years old. So
That
that just
is
shows the depth of the
unbelievable.
U.S.
Disparity. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you repeat that one more time? You
Yes.
were top 100 in the world.
Top 100 in the
That
world, but
that is
65th
amazing.
in the U.S. So it was like, yeah, thank
Shows
you.
you how good the U.S. is in swimming.
Yeah.
I have a question. So this dedication and discipline that you applied to athletics and to multiple sports, were you also a good student growing up?
Oh, always. I did travel a lot. A lot of it was, we did a lot of vacations, family vacations. We'd go to Florida for 2 weeks and we go to Hawaii for 2 weeks, and that was during the school year. But you miss Fridays for swim meets, you miss this for a softball tournament, you miss whatever it might be. I always got my homework ahead of time, and I always had it done when I got back. I wasn't allowed to fall behind, because the second I fell behind, I wasn't allowed to go. Our rule was if you didn't go to school, you didn't go to practice. So I would go to school sick. I don't think I missed more than a handful of days in my entire like schooling because I was sick. I had to be like deathly ill because
that's
I would
our
go to
rule.
practice sick.
That a school rule, or is that something you and your family decided to put together?
That's what my family decided.
Okay.
That's unbelievable. I love that. That is inspirational. I think our young listeners need to hear that very well,
I
very
go to
loud and
practice
clear.
like sick as a dog. Like I still overstretch that. My coach like, Val, just take the day off. I'm like, no, why?
So how was your day? Walk us through your day. So you go to school. Do you practice before school or after school?
Are we talking high school?
High
You're
school.
in high school.
High
Yeah.
school. Okay, so let's go junior, senior year of high school. I got a little bit burnt out after U.S. trials. I trained 2 years and I missed one practice in those 2 years. It was a lot, and it wasn't necessarily I was burnt out because I was training too much. It was just circumstantial, with the same people every day. You're with it's a very monotonous thing. Swimming, you stare at a black line for ridiculous hours of the day.
Right.
So my dad's like, you know what? Like, I dropped all my other sports. I just focused on swimming because that was the goal. And my dad's like, you should do track and field. Like, go throw a discus or go throw a shot put. Or, well, I'm not running. And they're like, you don't have to run. You don't have to do that. I was like, okay, great. So high school schedule. I would swim from 6 to 8 a.m. in the morning. I would go to school. I'd show up my second period of the day, and I'd go to school for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And one of those was a lunch hour. Well, during my lunch hour, I would go throw discus. My dad would drive to school, and I'd throw discus during lunch to get an extra practice in. It was only like 40 minutes, so I didn't have that many discs. So, I got a few extra reps in. And then my gym class, I got special approval to lift weights with the football team. So I would lift weights with our American football team. But keep in mind, I'm this size. So I'm bigger than half our varsity football team still.
And you're lifting heavier than them too.
So basically, I was at school, but I also was training at school. After school, I had my strength coach. I actually still have this strength coach to this day. He's the longest coach in my life. I love him dearly.
Wow.
And I would go lift for an hour after school, and then I'd come back and I would do track practice with the team. So I would throw disc. And a lot of times, I think that was supposed to be a 2-hour practice, but I had to get to swim practice. So this coach knew I was just doing this for fun. I had not no desire, but this was not my focus. I was doing this because this was going to be fun for me. And so I come back and I throw maybe an hour. My lifting place was really close to school. And then I would drive an hour to practice, and I would swim from 6 to 8 p.m. And then I would drive an hour back. So I'd get back at 9 o'clock at night, and I'd go to sleep, and then I'd wake up, and I swam 3 mornings a week and 5 afternoons a week, and track practices every day, and I'd lift 4 days a week.
It's funny because you would hear this workload and you would think this girl was burned out and was maybe there was a pressure situation around forcing her to do this, but you sound so happy speaking about this. You look back, it sounds like you're looking back being this
fun.
Is my own choice,
It was so fun. There was no I didn't hate any second of this. Yes, it added extra things to my day, but it was so much fun. I still, to this day, there are no regrets doing track. It was really, I got to throw a heavy object far.
It is that simple, right? That's what humans are supposed, physical output. That's fun,
right.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, you can tell how happy she is throughout sports. You can tell she's an athlete.
Yeah, I love sports.
So you mentioned burnout from swimming, but that you still kept up a little bit. At what point did you transition back into the grind? And I guess actually a better question, is Sam and I are very familiar with college recruitment when it comes to basketball. I think that's a pretty well documented thing, and not only basketball, all these mainstream sports. I don't have a fucking clue what it's like for swimming. So why don't you talk about how transition from burnout back into deciding you're going to go swim for a D1 program like Auburn.
Yeah, and when I say I was burnt out, there was no. It wasn't a burnout where I didn't want to do it anymore. It was more so like a very monotonous thing. Like and there wasn't even a pressure around it. Like there was no, Val, you have to do this or you have to get back in the water. Because I didn't take any break. That wasn't it either. And I was still going fast. I was still going best times. I'm trying to think. It was right after I made U.S. trials, I flew out and visited Stanford and Cal right away. Those were the two best teams in the country.
Sorry, I want to dive a little bit deeper because when you're, and this is at least when I was going through the process, I definitely wasn't a D1 athlete, but my friends they were allowed 3 official offers, which meant three schools could fly them out, and then they had a bunch of unofficial where they had to fly out on their own accord. Is that the same thing? Stanford and UCal flew you out?
No. So you're not allowed to be recruited until it was a certain date your junior year they could talk to you. But you weren't allowed to take official visits until your senior year.
Okay.
Right.
That being said,
but you still get 3, right? 3 visits only. Oh, you get 5. Okay.
And that's a swimming specific rule.
Swimming specific. But let's rewind a little bit. Now it's your junior year. So you get recruited your junior year. And you can start taking visits. But you can start talking to schools, I believe, your sophomore year.
Freshman year as well.
In basketball,
I don't. Yes, I don't think for
basketball you can get recruited 7th grade, dude.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
But you can email. I think that's what we did is we emailed, and my dad's like, let's fly you out there. We made a weekend out of it. I visited Stanford and Cal. The coaches.
Those are great 2 universities right there.
Yeah, if you were on campus, they can talk to you. So we're like, hey, we're going to be on campus from 8 a.m. to noon here and from 2 to 6.
Sitting here, yeah.
And
in case you walk by.
Yeah, right. And that's kind of how you have to play it. That's how everyone plays it. And I sat down, I met with them, and again, I was one of the top swimmers in my class for sure during that time. And they sat down, we talked, and then all of a sudden junior year hit, and I did 23 unofficial visits.
Wow.
23?
23. I did.
At this point, had you traveled around the U.S. before? Was this your first real experience going around the U.S.?
I traveled a lot. I traveled a lot growing up. I traveled a lot overseas too growing up. I was very fortunate. My family made sure I was well traveled. We train hard and we rest harder. That's kind of our thing is.
Valerie, did they do basketball? Did they come and watch you while you were in high school?
Yeah,
the coaches from other universities?
Well, yeah, I had a few coaches come watch me, but it's when a school really wants you, they'll come to show interest. When they're really trying to seal the deal. Swimming is a very objective sport. You don't have to watch someone to know they're going to be good. You either go the time or you don't. It's not you're looking at the schedule, or you're not looking you either go a minute in your 100 breaststroke or you don't. And if you don't go that minute, you're not going to make the roster. It's pretty simple. That was just simple.
Interesting. So coach cannot come and see Valerie and be like, you know what, she has potential. If I work on her, I can actually help her and break her time or have a faster time. No?
To an extent they can. They have to look at your progression. If you started swimming in high school and you're dropping seconds per year, they're going to look at you and be like, okay, yes, this girl has a lot of potential to drop. Or a lot of times they'll go to a junior nationals so they can see a bunch of kids. And they'll go to a competition and watch you swim and be like, oh my gosh, that girl's technique is so messed up. How does she go that fast? If I had her, I'd change this, this, and this. She'd go faster.
Okay, fair. Makes sense.
So with that in mind, how do you go from 23 unofficial visits to landing at Auburn? Walk us through that process.
Yeah, so 23 unofficial visits. Some schools I visited more than once just because we were in the final offers. And I narrowed it down to 6 schools, and I took my 5 official visits. So it was Southern Cal, UCLA, University of Hawaii, University of Arizona, LSU, Auburn. And the one I didn't take was UCLA. I already met with those coaches a few times. And it was more so that was a great academic school and I loved it, but it was a women's only program and I wanted a co-ed program. That was super important to me. My senior year of high school, I trained with 9 boys and I was the only girl. There was no drama and we just got after it every single day and I loved that. I loved that.
My gosh. It's funny how often women say that, isn't it?
Yeah. Honestly though, it makes it so fun.
Oh my! For you to turn UCLA down for that reason, that's unbelievable. We're talking about UCLA.
Yeah,
And I'm shocked you didn't choose Hawaii because you spoke so happy about Hawaii.
yeah. So here's the whole process. Is it went down to Auburn. Auburn actually was my last visit. I almost didn't take Auburn because Hawaii was the weekend before. So I was ready, like, on the spot, like, I am going to Hawaii for sure. And
Yeah.
Dan, if you're listening to this, if you ever see this, you really were first place in my heart at the beginning. Like, I was going to go to Hawaii, I promised you, until I went to Auburn. And I already visited Auburn before that. I saw it once before. My best friend went to University of Arizona, and I loved University of Arizona. Again, my best friend was there. She just got third at NCAAs as a sophomore. Right before I did my visit, so she was 2 years ahead of me. I was ready for that too. Wasn't like thrilled about living in Tucson, Arizona, but it was just kind of like Auburn and Arizona at the time were both like a top 12 program in the country, so they were pretty even playing field. And then it came down to Hawaii, Auburn, Arizona, and it was like, I want to go to Hawaii. And my brother, he's 4 years older than me, looked at me and was like, Val, I watched you do all this. I watched you make all the sacrifices. You can go to University of Hawaii and be happy and, like, you'll swim well. Or you can go to an SEC school that has all the money and all the resources and go to the program that's won more national championships than any other school in program history and be the best you can be.
Wow.
And
So Auburn is like the Kentucky for men's basketball, essentially.
We're a blue blood of swimming. There's 5 of us in the blue blood. It's Michigan, Indiana, Auburn. I want to say Chapel Hill, maybe. There's another one, but Auburn, Michigan, Indiana are the 3 known for basically founding NCAA swimming.
Wow. Okay.
I didn't know that.
And was the coach that was there at the time playing a big part in your decision as well?
For sure. I committed under Brett Hawk, but there was a outstanding coaching staff there. I love Brett, but Sergio Lopez, he was a coach for Spain. He was a 3-time medalist. He was a 200 breaststroke medalist back in the day. I loved him, and he produced breaststrokers, and Brett produced sprinters, and I was a breaststroke sprinter. There were other amazing people on that coaching staff too, but at the end of the day, I knew it was going to be hard, but that is the place I felt that I could be the most successful. If Valerie Tarazi was going to be the most successful, it was going to be at Auburn University. Okay. And then I committed. I was so happy. My brother's like, you made the right decision. My parents like, you did make the right decision, but we're going to let you make this one on your own. And I signed my papers it was October 7th because it was 2 days before my birthday. We announced it on my birthday that I signed. I had caps from every school lined up. You know how football players do that? Well, I did swim caps from every school, and then I picked my swim cap.
I love that you did that. That's awesome. That's amazing.
That was my dad's idea.
What year was that?
2017. Yeah, 2017.
2017. Okay.
That's when Sam and I met, actually.
Yep.
No way. If you look, the picture's on my Instagram, so it was a cool day.
Do you wish you're in college right now with the new NIL deals that's going on?
Well, I got 2 years of NIL.
Tell me about it.
Well, it was the first 2 years, and swimmers make absolutely zero money off of it.
You're serious?
Yeah, I think No one had deals on my team. We had one swimmer, he was a US national team member. He had a deal with Tier, which is a swim brand, and he got free tech
Right.
suits. But he technically couldn't wear those for Auburn because we're an arena school.
That's crazy.
So
Wow.
That's crazy.
yeah.
And they're going to Auburn and they still can't get money for NIL. That's crazy. Imagine the smaller schools.
Yeah, unless you're, a gymnastics, basketball, football,
Football,
you know,
track and field.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even say track and
Not
field, but
really.
Auburn's getting money. Very,
Okay.
very few.
Are
We
you surprised with the NIL money that's going on around nowadays? Are you seeing these numbers that
we
these
could have a
athletes are
whole
getting?
podcast on how I feel about NIL.
Interesting. So the way you said that makes me think you might disagree, but the one thing I'll say about this topic is that schools make so much money off of athletes and have historically, and I don't know enough about the structure to comment on whether it's right or wrong, but the idea of paying athletes at a younger age, so long as we encourage them to be prudent in how they spend their money and save their money, it's about fucking time.
No, I think it just should be regulated and it should be balanced, evened out. That's it. Like this player shouldn't go to Duke, and Duke is allowed. The NIL should be able to get you $5 million, but the other schools, the max you can get is $1 million. It's just not going to be fair.
Yeah, so again, we could have a whole podcast on this one. But essentially, NIL is pushing Olympic sports out.
Oh,
Very,
tell me more.
very much so.
Can we dive into that a little bit more, Abudi, please?
Please.
Tell me.
Yeah, so I can't out who has the whole details on this, but
Yeah, interesting.
first of all, a lot of schools, which people don't realize, are in mass amounts of debt because of this, because they're paying out either old coaches or they're paying out athletes or whatever might happen. Olympic sports aren't getting paid. That's like not happening. I know specifically for us at Auburn, we don't have athletes really getting paid, if anything, and anything that our swimmers are getting paid is coming from the alum. Like we have an alum collective where we put money in a fund and that's what we're giving
Wow.
our
So it's based on just people wanting to give back. It's not actually based on the NIL.
no. And that's kind of how this is getting real messed up is when they put NIL out there, like, great, yes, there should be an opportunity for you to make money off of your name, image, likeness, for sure. I agree, because to an extent, especially, in college football, kids were making, schools were making ridiculous money off of the athletes, for sure. You're going,
Insane.
people would come to Auburn University to watch Bo Nix.
Yeah,
Like, they were coming to watch our quarterback, for sure.
100%.
Right.
QB1.
Right. Right. People aren't coming to swim meets. We're not. It's Olympic sports in general. There's only 2 revenue sports at Auburn, and there was only one until very recently. It was only football was the only revenue sport. The second revenue sport is basketball, and that's because we're number 1 in the country right now. Shout out right there. But the next best one is gymnastics, and gymnastics sold out season tickets, and they're still not a revenue sport. People don't understand how much it costs to have student athletes on campus. So we, as student athletes, get a ridiculous amount of resources, especially in Power 5, and that's really where NIL is affecting. We have free tutors. All of our meals are free. We have snacks, we have nutritionists, we have mentors, we have strength coach, we have personalized, we have coaches. We have everything, and our class schedules are structured around our practice schedules.
Okay.
We have everything to be successful. Free tutoring, you can have as much free tutoring as you want. If I wanted to sit there for 10 hours a day with a private tutor to make sure I passed my Calc 2 class, I could. And it's all paid for. And
So this is leading back to you saying all these schools are in debt, essentially.
yeah. And like you paying an 18-year-old, $10 million to play the first season when they ride the bench the whole time. Like, I'm not saying you shouldn't be paying student athletes, but there has to be a type of regulation, because Yes. Okay, so all the money is going towards football, going towards basketball, the revenue sports. You're pushing Olympic sports out because you can't afford the Olympic sports anymore. They're not making you money. If anything, they're just taking up space.
I mean, this is why I said it should be regulated. But
It
my
needs
only
to be
thing
regulated.
is like football players, they're putting their bodies on the line, and you see these stadiums are fitting 50,000 people, and they're making a lot of money. And if they make it to a bowl, they're even getting crazy money. And I just don't
Yeah.
think it's fair for a coach to be making 15, 20 million and a player not making anything. You know what I mean? So that's why I think it needs to be regulated. And I think they do, especially football players and basketball players, they do need to earn some money. Like NIL should, but it shouldn't be 10 million or 5 million. It
Yeah.
should be enough where they're comfortable, and at the same time, it helps them to get to that next level, which is the NFL or the NBA or whatever. You know what I mean? MLB.
Right. And then, I mean, you have kids that transfer. You have like a whole slew of issues, but they're even this is a thing that just got passed for swimming. So you travel a roster of 22 men, 22 women. You have 12 scholarships for women, 14 for men. Cut it however you want. But you could have as many people as you want on the team. If you wanted to have 100 people and cut your scholarships into 10% scholarships, you could. They are roster capping now. You can only have 24 men and 24 women on a swim team. That's insane. That only allows. We just had a kid break his thumb last week, 2 weeks ago. Okay, so if this was a roster cap year, we'd have 23. What happens if someone gets sick at SECs? Okay,
Yeah.
you're down to your 22. You have no wiggle room. So
Wow.
now you're roster capping because you can't afford to have extra kids on campus on the roster. And it's not Auburn. It's everyone now. So it's crazy.
I was gonna say I see what you mean when you say we can have a whole podcast about this, because
Yeah.
there's definitely lots to unpack. But I do want to go back into your college career, because I know that not only was there a lot there in terms of coaching changes and your experience, your injuries, but also this is where you start to understand and realize that this dream you've been manifesting of representing Palestine is becoming a reality. And I think that's a really important topic that we talk about. So we know that you've committed to Auburn to work under a specific coach and coaching staff. Talk to us about arriving on campus and your college experience.
Yeah, so again, I committed October 7th of 2017, and by March of 2018, they wiped the entire coaching staff, and they got rid of my major, which was going to be international business. And when I was looking at schools, part of the process was I took the top 50 swim schools and the top 50 business schools, and I crossed them off. So they had to have both.
Yeah.
And I was like, why am I even going to Auburn? I'm not going with this coaching staff, and they don't have the major I want. And I was like, shoot, this is going to suck. I'm not happy about this. My dad's like, no, Val, Auburn's a great school. You're going to be happy here. Trust me. And you could get out of your contract because of the coaching staff. But I was like, no, I'll stay at Auburn. I love so much more about Auburn than just a few things. And I went in my freshman year, and it was great and everything. And I got this coaching staff, and let's just say it was, for the next 3 years, it was less than fun. COVID happened, which certainly didn't help the situation, but it's funny how coaches can make or break you, and they broke me.
Oof.
And my dad to this day will say that they broke me. That I sent you a Ferrari and you trashed it. You ran it into a pole.
Okay, wait, let's unpack.
Yeah, definitely unpack that. Tell us more.
And on top of that, I had extreme back pain when I came back from COVID. So that was the beginning of my junior year.
Did
I
you
kept
catch
saying
COVID?
my back hurts, and they're like, get some stem done on it, get some cupping done, And then my toes went numb at practice. I was like, nah, this is not just my back hurts. This is I can't stand up straight anymore. And it took.
What caused all this? Was it?
I'll get there. This is crazy. So,
Okay, sorry.
so that was, I remember it happened September was really bad. October, I couldn't stand up straight. It took until January.
This is your sophomore year?
Junior year.
Junior, okay.
Yes, junior year. So it took until January for me to get an MRI on my back. And in January is like, we just came off a training camp, core everything, like trained really hard, got this MRI, and like, well, you have 12 stress fractures, 2 bulging discs, and your SI's pinched. We're really surprised you're not
What?
a gymnast or a horseback rider.
Oh
And I was
my
like, what did
gosh.
this? And they're like, years of wear and tear. I was like, what? It's swimming.
But also shot put in baseball and ice hockey and everything else you did probably
Right,
contributed to
right.
it.
Lifting with the football team as well in high
Maybe,
school.
maybe.
Valerie, you can't just say it's swimming. Obviously, it wasn't just fucking swimming.
So, they were like, well, do you even want to swim SECs? SECs were 2 weeks away. And I was like, you're joking, right? You just had me swim from September until 2 weeks before SECs, and you're going to be like, oh, like, do you want to swim? Yeah, I want to swim at SECs. Like,
I'm talking about.
yeah, like what? I just trained the whole season. What's another 2 weeks gonna do? It's already messed up, right? So basically, I say drugged me up in a very light sense. I got some pretty heavy muscle relaxers, and I did horrible swim meet. Point blank, I ended up making one final, scoring a few points there, but I was extremely unhappy. And I came back in the spring. You normally get like 1 week off. I came back in the spring, and first practice back, Monday, fly day. We don't do fly days, that's like not a thing, but we decided to swim an entire practice butterfly, and I got through maybe 200 yards of it, and I was sitting there just crying on the edge of the pool. And my coach goes, you're not even in shape enough to do this. And I was like, my back is broken. Like, I'm not even allowed to swim butterfly, and you're having me swim butterfly. And he's like, you can just get out and leave then. And I was like, okay. And I got out and left. And
Was
then
there
I went
anything
to the
that
locker room
happened
and I
early
called my
on
dad.
in this? Sorry, but just out of curiosity, because you mentioned a bad coach that can make you break you. I know Sam and I have had experience definitely with bad coaches. I mean, did anything happen at any point in the first or second year of this new coach coming in that caused the tension, or was it really just targeted, anti-Valerie rhetoric?
Oh no, it was there were a lot of things. And I mean a lot. To the point where we had a team of about 65 kids and 23 quit. 23.
Oh, wow.
We couldn't even
Because of the
fill,
coach.
yes, we couldn't even fill a whole men's roster.
Was it
And
his approach or his communication or the way, like, what was it? Was he,
narcissistic.
I figured. Okay.
I do have to be a little careful what I say. I don't care if he watches this, quite frankly, but he is a coach of a top program too right now. So, I mean, it's not hard to look it up. But
Yeah.
point
Right.
being is, it says a lot when a head coach specifically, can have 23 people quit. I mean,
It's almost negligence on Auburn's part for letting it get to that point.
yeah, and I mean, there were people that went to compliance that wrote letters and all this stuff, and it was messy. Like it truly was messy, and it wasn't just my junior year. It was the first year was fine, honestly. New coaching staff, everyone's kind of excited, and then it really just went downhill the next 2 years. It did, and like I said, I got out of the pool that day, and I would never let him see me cry. I don't cry, first of all, but I would never let him see
What,
me cry.
what made you stay? What made you not walk away?
Well, the day I got pulled out of the water, that was the day that my athletic trainer was like, okay, we're going to have to pull you out of the pool, like, and actually rehab your back. And it was the summer, unfortunately, it was the summer of 2021, which was the year of U.S. Olympic trials. And I felt like the biggest failure in the whole world because I made U.S. trials at 15 years old, and I was one of the youngest people there, and I was pulled out of the water, and I couldn't even make trials in my prime at 21 years old. And I was like, wow, this is a big failure. So he pulled me out. I rehabbed my back that summer, and in this time, we had a new coaching staff come in. And I sat down with our head coach one of the first days he got on campus, and I was going into my senior year, and I said, listen, I'm out of the pool right now. And I've never been out of the pool before. I really hadn't been out of the pool more than a week a year. And I was like, this kind of sucks. Like, my back's broken. And he's like, you know what? That's okay. We're going to meet you where you're at. And I was like, what?
Wow.
We're going to meet you
Crazy
where
because that
you're
sounds
at?
like a simple thing to say, but it's actually really powerful when you've been
Yeah.
not met where you are for the last 2 years.
Right. And I was like, okay. So I rehabbed my back 6 weeks. I was on deck a few days, just like with my team, maybe help coach a little bit, meaning just I had a stopwatch, get some times on some things. And I got back in the water, and I remember my first practice, we do the same warm-up every day with this coaching staff. It was 400, 4 100s, 450s, and you're supposed to do 4 dolphin kicks off of every wall. Well, I hadn't done a dolphin kick in like a full year, except when I raced. And I went up to my coach, and it was like stroke specific. So I was like, hey, Vlad, like, I know you want us to do 4 dolphin kicks, but I haven't done a dolphin kick in about a year. Like, my back is still not great. And he's like, that's okay. He's like, why don't you try 1 for today? That would have never, ever happened with the old staff, ever. It would have been, oh, you can't do the practice? Get out and leave. Like, what? So that was a huge, like, first day for me. Is I went from having one staff that just passed you by to another one was like, no, like, we're gonna build you up here. The craziest thing is, again, I don't swim butterfly and I don't dolphin kick because my back was so bad. And I was like, listen, the 200 IM is one of my main events. I promise you, I will give you a great 200 IM at the end of the season and at mid-season. I'll give you 4 great IMs, a prelim, a final, prelim, final. But please, like, I'm not training IM. Like, I'm not doing any individual medley training. He's like, you don't have to swim a stroke of butterfly until you get to the swim meet. And I was like,
Wow.
Great. I dropped 3 seconds in my 200 IM that year. 3 seconds. I hadn't gone a best time since I was 18 years old.
That is amazing.
Had the best season of my life. Ended up having the best coaches, and I'm still with them today.
And those are the coaches that sort of helped you then figure out that you were eligible to represent Palestine, which is where we kind of want to segue into now. So
Yeah.
at this point, had you also started your own self-discovery journey? I know you told me that your family comes from the third oldest church in the world, that you have a house that's still standing in southern Gaza, that was built in 1755. For all the Zionists in the back, that's, centuries before Israel was founded. And that your great aunt was a founder of Birzeit University. So all this stuff you're finding out while also simultaneously you meet, I believe it was a coach of the Kazakhstani national team that knew the Jordanian national coach, and that's kind of how it happened?
Yeah, so while this new staff came in, it was 2021, so right off like an Olympic year, which sounds weird having like only 3 years between Olympics, but it really like fast tracked everything for me. So I remember I came off a great SEC championship in February of 22, and I was like, listen, Vlad, like, I want to represent Palestine. Like, I have like all the credentials I need theoretically to represent Palestine, but how do I do this? And I went to my head coach too, and I remember I was like, Ryan, like, I want to represent Palestine. I want to represent internationally. He's like, great, let's do it. And I didn't expect to have so much support, like, right off the bat. So I sat down with Vlad and I was like, listen, I explained my history, and he was like, okay, well, a few weeks from now I'll be at World Championships, and I have a few friends. Let me see if I can find the Palestinian delegation there. If not, I'll make some contacts and we'll figure it out. So he comes back and he's like, you know what, Val? I completely forgot. One of my friends who I swam with at University of Alabama is the head coach of the Jordanian team. So I got the swimming federation's like president's phone number from him. And I was like, well, that was easy. Like, how did that was easy. So anyways, I ended up contacting him a few times, and again, there's a huge language barrier, cultural barrier too, because everything we do in the U.S. is like get it done, and next thing you know, a week later everything's set. But
I mean, we could have a separate podcast on how long things take in this region, but I want to let you keep cooking. So go ahead and keep telling the story.
Yeah. So, anyways, things kind of, it was a slow process there. But in the meantime, I posted this thing on Instagram, and for anyone that cares, it's still up there. It's a picture of me in my Auburn suit, and it was like, and that's a wrap, meaning I'm retired, but not really. And I had a Palestinian flag, a little tiny thing, because I was like, I knew this was gonna, we're still working on it. And one of the other swimmers, I followed him on Instagram. He was an Olympian in Tokyo for Palestine. He like slid into my DMs, was like, wait a second, you're Palestinian? And I said, yeah. And he said, why aren't you representing us? And I said, I mean, I'm trying. It's just, this, and this. And he was like, no. You want to represent Palestine? Call this guy. And I ended up calling Nader Jayusi, and maybe a week or two later, I had an email. I was on a plane to Hawaii, and it said, congratulations, you're going to World Championships, the Arab Games, and the Asian Games. And I was like, oh my gosh, my flight's about to take off to go to Hawaii on vacation. In 6 weeks from now, I'm supposed to be racing in Algeria. So I was about to take off, and I called Vlad. I'm like, Vlad, read this message. Like, I'm about to take off, but like, I made the Palestinian national team. He's like, okay, we'll talk when you land. So the rest is history.
That's incredible. And you mentioned that part of the process was also like trying to find some old documents, but that ultimately what helped was that on your grandfather's passport, it was written that he was born in Gaza, correct?
Yes. So it's hard to find any documentation. My dad did a lot of that for me. Again, we don't have contact with a lot of relatives. We're very Chicago, Illinois, Crystal Lake, Illinois. Everyone got dispersed. That's kind of how it works in Palestine, is you lose contact with family. My grandfather, when he came over, all of his sisters stayed, and his two other brothers went to two different places. Crazy enough, my grandfather ended up living in a suburb of Chicago, and my dad was in school one day, and they're like, oh, like Martin Tarazi, like, are you related to Walid Tarazi? And he's like, what are you talking about? There's another Tarazi in the school? And he's like, yeah, my dad's uncle and his father ended up getting completely separated for years and years and ended up living one street apart in Chicago.
No way.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So they got like
insane.
reconnected in that way. But again, there's still not a lot of family there. It was hard to get in contact with a lot of people. We didn't really know our family in Gaza. And how do you get in contact with people? It's difficult, especially when my dad doesn't speak any Arabic. We did have the right documentation. My grandfather's U.S. passport did say he was born in Gaza City. We had my dad's baptismal certificate signed from the priest at the church saying that he was baptized in Gaza. So that also helped. And then Tarazi, it's a very well-known name.
Prominent Palestinian name,
Yeah.
So you, upon registering, you have a few months to prepare for the Arab Games, where you went and won 2 gold, 3 silver, and 1 bronze. Can you talk to us about what it was like representing Palestine for the first time, and also doing so while being so successful at a high level?
Yeah. So found out that I was going to Algeria. One of my other coaches, Gideon, represented South Africa. And he's like, oh, I went to an African Games in Algeria. Make sure you bring a lot of food. And I was like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? And he's like, yeah.
I remember those trips.
He's like, I went days without eating there. Like, I remember if you weren't like the first 20 in line, you didn't get like crackers and jam. I was like, what?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, you need to be careful, like, when you go to Algeria. I'm not thrilled you're going alone. I'm like, what? I was like, what am I getting myself into here? Luckily, that was not the case at all. But
It's
I
not
didn't have
that
a bag
bad.
with me. Anyways, so I got to the village, and I didn't know anyone. And the first day, I hear a knock at my door, and I just got in. Apparently, the other swimmers were already there. They went to the pool, and they came back, and this little tiny girl, she knocked on my door, and she was like, "Hi, are you Valerie?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm Valerie." She's like, "I'm Daniela. Like, I'm from Jerusalem. Blah 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 blah." And she just like this huge ball of energy, and she's like, wow, your arms are so big. Like, wow, like, I can't believe you let you swim. We all think you're like the fastest person ever. And I was like, wow, this is cool. So I went downstairs and I met them, and that was my first like real interaction with any Palestinian besides my family. And it still to this day, I text her all the time and check in on her, but it from that point, it was like I'm representing a family of people, and luckily it was a game, so I got to meet all other athletes. So let's fast forward. I swam my first race, and I'll truly never ever forget it. It was the 50 breaststroke. I struggled in this event for years and years and years. I'm actually a U.S. national champion in the 50 breaststroke. That was my event, and I struggled, and I hadn't gone to best time, and I remember I was getting ready to walk out, and I didn't have a Palestine flag on my cap, and I wasn't going to be disrespectful and wear an AU, although I will wear an Auburn cap at every other meet in my life. I turned my cap into a plain white swim cap, and I had the white jacket. It said Palestine on the back and had our little logo. And so we walked out, and they announced I was seated with no times for every event, so I was in an outside lane, and no one had ever heard of me. So I was like looking over, I was like, these girls got nothing on me. That's my thought process. I was like, these girls don't even know who I am. And I dove in, and I was like, okay, I got to do this for Palestine, right? Like, I'm representing a nation now. I'm not representing myself. Yep. And I remember I touched the wall, and I looked over. And I looked over, and I watched the other people finish. And I knew I won. And I turned around, and I saw a one next to the Palestinian flag next to my name. And that was the proudest moment ever. And then I looked at my time and realized that I didn't go best time, but that is the closest I'd been in 7 years. Like, I was 10ths off, like, very little amount of time off, and I couldn't believe it. Like, I didn't have that much training under me. I won for Palestine. That was the first gold medal I think Palestine had ever won in an Arab Games, and I didn't know it at the time. Wow. So, like, everyone, it was the first day of the games, too, so every other sport came to watch me, and I'm just thinking, like, this is normal. Like, Auburn supports Auburn, like, everyone comes to watch us. Like, no, I had a fan section there. Like, we had people cheering. So I stepped on the podium.
Putting Palestine on the map.
I stepped on the podium, and I had this giant Palestinian, like, silk flag. And I held it up in national anthem. Well, then, like, I had to go. I had another race, like, then. And I didn't even cool down. And it was 100 backstroke. And the only reason I swam for the 100 backstroke is because I was like, okay, like, I'll swim 2 events a day. It's under a minute. Like, I can swim a minute. I wasn't a backstroker. Like, I haven't swam backstroke since I was 13 years old. So I jumped in the water and ended up just racing. And I knew that I came off the wall and I saw another girl. I'm very good friends with her now. I saw her in the middle of the pool, and I was like, there's no way I'm letting this girl beat me. Like, I'm representing Palestine. Like, I'm representing Palestine. I'm going to win. And
Where was she from?
Bahrain.
Okay.
Yeah, so I ended up touching the wall, and I won again. And I was like, 2 gold medals in one night? Like, no way. Wow. And literally that was my thought process in my head, is I was like, there's no way this is happening. First of all, that's my first best time in 10 years in that event. 10 years. How do you go 10 years and not go best time? But I do.
Valerie Tarazi, you got 2 golds in one day.
Yeah.
But how does that compare, because you said that was your proudest moment, to being the flag bearer in the 2024 Olympics?
Yeah.
And how were you able to get that you just competed for 1 year as a
Yeah.
Palestinian. For them to give you that, how did it feel?
Well, so I didn't know it at the time, but that was my life-changing moment right there, at that
Okay.
games. And obviously I got a lot of media around it too, because they're like, who is this girl that's winning for Palestine? The other swimmer, Yazan, also won 2 gold medals. And we were like, wow, like this is huge. And our Olympic Committee president was actually in the capital and flew into Iran to come watch us swim the last day, because they're like, he didn't know who we were. This was this was a new thing for us. So he came in, watched us swim. That's when I met him the first time, and I ended up giving him my medal, because I was like, I don't know who this guy is, but everyone thinks he's like super important. So here's my medal. And that literally, again,
one of your gold medals, not both of them.
So I was like, that's my thought process, right? And I didn't even know he was the Olympic Committee president. Quite frankly, I didn't even know what that was. I was just, living in my moment. And I was like, everyone thinks this guy's special. Like, cool. Little did I know that guy is the reason my life has changed, truly. So Jabril Rajoub, he's our Olympic Committee president. He's known Abu Rami. So
Yeah.
fast forward, because I won that, he invited me to Palestine. Went to Palestine. I got to spend 2 weeks there, and we talked about that. That was so special. Well, because of that, we went to Asian Games, and again, I met Abu Rami, and we had a few talks, and he pulled me aside, and he said, Valerie, do you remember when you were in Palestine and you spoke to that group of students? And I was thinking back, I was like, I spoke to a lot of people. Well, one day when I was in Palestine, I spoke to a group of like college students from UCLA, funny enough, UCLA, that were coming to learn about the conflict. And we just so happened, like, Yazan and I, the other swimmer, like, we were actually walking out of like the Olympic Committee headquarters to go do something else, but he's like, no, Valerie, Yazan, like, you come with us. So I came with them, and he gave a little speech, and he's like, do you have anything to say, Valerie? And I was like, listen, like, this is my first time in Palestine. I represent Palestine. I do this. I want you to know what a special place this is. This is nothing like you see on the news. And you see that, and you're going to go around Palestine, and you're going to see how beautiful the land is. You're going to see Israel. You're going to see how beautiful that land is. And you're going to see everything. But I want you to go back and truly explain what you see and the people you meet, not what they tell you on the news. You're going to have an experience here, and it's going to be nothing like you see on the news. But spread that and let people know that, like, it's okay to visit here. It's a beautiful place. Explain how, different religions get along here. It's not a place where I'm a Christian and I feel attacked every day of my life. Like, no, Christians and Muslims get along great. It's not like that. And that's the gist of what I said. I was like, I'm an American. I go here. I do this. And so anyways, we're in China, and Abu Rami pulls me aside. He's like, you remember that talk you gave? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, you're a very good speaker. He's like, I've watched your interviews. You do very well. You represent us very well. And I was just, thank you, and everything. And he gave me his business card, and he's like, just, text me if you need anything. And I was like, thank you. And I just texted him. I was like, thank you so much. Like, I really appreciate all the opportunities that I've been given. And we just kept in contact. And because of this, everything has transpired to where I'm at today. And, I take my interviews, and I do my very best to give my personal experience. I'm not here to be a politician. I'm not here to speak on behalf of all of Palestine and politics, but I'm going to give you my story and the stories of the people very close to me, the stories of the other athletes, and I'm going to tell you how it is. Take that information and do what you want with it. And I think Abu Rami and I have gotten very close because of that. I am here for the goodness of Palestine. Like, I want to represent Palestine in the best way possible. I want to free Palestine in the best way possible. And I'm going to tell people stories. I'm going to take every opportunity I get to talk with all these great people.
Valerie, can I ask you a question?
For sure.
How many Palestinians were at the Paris Olympics?
There was 8 of us.
Did you feel any of them felt a certain way when you were chosen to be the flag bearer?
Not at all.
Just because? No? Okay, they were very supportive?
Yes.
That's awesome. Okay.
The Palestinian group of people, honestly, all of our athletes, I haven't had a problem with a single athlete, truly.
Okay.
It's not that, oh my gosh, like, you're an American, you're representing us. No, because
Okay.
most of our athletes are not in Palestine. We can't be. It's not possible.
Right.
And I think there's an understanding that you are a Palestinian no matter where you are in the world. President Abbas, I met him when I was in Palestine as like I got the Presidential Medal of Honor and Freedom for Palestine. And I remember I sat with him, and he immediately looked at my father and goes, "When's the last time you were in Palestine?" And my dad's like 50 years ago. He's like, "You don't speak any Arabic?" And he's like, "No." He's like, "You don't keep in contact with your family?" He's like, "Well, it's very hard to keep in contact." And I was like, "Well, this is it. Like, 3 strikes, we're out." And it seemed like the conversation was going in a very negative way. And I remember he looked at me, he stopped talking to my dad completely, and he looked at me and goes, "We don't care where you live in the world. You are always Palestinian, and you are always welcome back home." And
It's beautiful.
I was
That's
like,
beautiful.
wow, that is not what I thought was going to happen there. And I felt so much love and support from the Palestinian people. They're not a hateful people, truly. They're the kind of people in the
Nothing
whole
about our
world.
culture preaches hate.
Right.
They're not a hateful people. Like, there are a lot of people that could be jealous of a whole slew of things. It was funny because we just had a girl win the World Junior Championship for, was it karate? It was karate. Yes. World Junior Championship for karate. 16 years old, from Palestine, lives in Palestine. And I remember I talked to Abarami. I was like, wow, this is so amazing. He goes, "Are you jealous?" And I said, "No. Are you kidding? Like, we have someone representing us internationally
On a
that's
global
winning."
scale, yeah.
That's
And
what it's all about. That is what it's
it's
all
always
about.
been it was like a joke. He knew I wasn't jealous, but there's not a jealousy among Palestinian athletes.
Well, I think I want to extend that beyond athletes. I think we're at this stage now where we've seen, and I don't want to get too political, but we've seen the world idly watch by as people try and erase our history, Zionists trying to erase our history. And I think what that's made us do is come together a lot more. So it's you in athletics, but also Sam and I, and what we're trying to do and showcase people like you and be people of social influence with Palestinian heritage. And I think the reverse of what everyone else thought would happen, that our spirits would be broken and that we'd be sort of deterred from speaking about where we're from and who we are. It's actually the reverse has happened, right? And it's made us want to give more light and to shed more light on our culture and our heritage because of what you say, which is inherently we are people that have a lot of love and a people that have a deep, rich history and a people that genuinely want to see the best out of each other. And so everything you're saying, even though you're speaking about swimming and representing Palestine on an Olympic scale, resonates very deeply with why Sam and I got together and started this podcast in the first place. And it leads me to a question I wanted to ask is, and you've kind of answered it already, but a quick Instagram stalk of you will show that you have your fair share of haters in the comments. And, people love to say, you're not from Palestine, you've only been there once or twice. And now you do have social influence and you are known. So my question to you is, have you felt the negative side of your, newfound fame at all, given that you live in the U.S.?
Yes, I have like the negative comments for sure, and you can say I'm not Palestinian or my parents weren't born in Palestine or My favorite are the comments that are like just so like, well, her parents weren't kicked out of Gaza. No, like my parents weren't kicked out of Gaza. My grandfather left Gaza because of everything going on. But it's so funny. It's like, well, her parents weren't kicked out of Gaza. They left on their own terms. I'm like, first of all, my parents never lived in Gaza. Let's put that one out there.
Because they couldn't.
What's funny is at the Olympics, I got a lot of support, ridiculous support that I didn't expect. I truly believed, like, I don't know what world I was living in, but I thought everyone hated Palestine. I was like, everyone hates us and this and that. I would say out of the 206 National Olympic Committees, 200 of them like made a conscious effort to go out of their way to support us. Like there was a ridiculous amount of support, but I mean, yeah, I was looking at one of our videos. Yazin and I collaborated on it, and it was actually a super cool video idea. It was like him zooming in on his hat, and it's like, oh, there's no pools in Palestine, and then zooming out at the Olympic rings, but still have 2 swimmers at the Olympics. That video gets like
beautiful,
ridiculous amount of negative comments like all the time. Like still to this day, I get notifications. Like I'll wake up with like 10 new like.
She's not even Palestinian. Like,
Yeah, like I don't even know. It's ridiculous, but for you,
it seems like it drives you further, though. To be honest.
Well, I was sitting with my coach at the Olympics once, and there was a negative comment, and I was kind of making fun of the comment a little bit, but my coach thought it was like actually kind of like negatively affecting me. But I was like looking at it and I was like making a joke, and he goes, "Val, click on one of those comments and look at the person that commented it." And I was like, okay. So I looked at it and it was like 0 followers, follows like 100 people. And I was like, he's like, see, that is someone who created an account just to shit on people. And he's like, these people have
Keyboard
no life.
warrior.
They have no life. They have no idea what's going on in the world. Like, those are not the people to listen to. And I remember I really took that to heart because I was like, I was making fun of it. It really wasn't affecting me in the moment. But it's true. Like, your perception on things is far more important than what other people think. And I know who supports me, and I know I have a very strong, close-knit circle who are committed to my success and support what I do, and those are the people I care about.
That's amazing.
Valerie, you spoke a little bit about once the war started, in some of your interviews, how you lost a friend and you guys lost some family members in the war. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. So I said I was at the Asian Games in China, and that was the end of September.
Right.
Luckily, I say luckily, but there was a huge delegation there. I think we brought almost 150 athletes, which was that's giant for us. And I swam. Swimming is always like at the beginning of games. I swam the first like 6 or 7 days. Well, they let me stay in an extra like 4 or 5 days, so I got to go watch all the sports. I got to just hang out and get to know people, and it was before opening ceremonies, and I got to know the beach volleyball team pretty well. I got to know some track and field athletes pretty well, and it was really fun. Like, again, these are my first interactions with Palestinians. I don't know a lot of Palestinians, and again, just like the sweetest people. So, yeah, you get close to people. You have a common thing. You're Palestinian. You're representing your country. You're dedicated to your sport, especially the people from Gaza, the athletes from Gaza. Like, I want to know. I want to go to Gaza. I want to see what's there. I would love to go someday. It's ceasefire. Right. Like, let's start a new beginning here.
See your.
Yeah.
Right. I would love to do that. And again, so I'm a very outgoing person. I talk to everyone. I want to know about these people. And I remember I left, it was like October 2nd or 3rd, and our beach volleyball team and track and field athletes, they left the 2nd or 3rd of October. And a week later, I was sitting in class, and I remember October 7th. I still never forget. I was laying in bed, and Yazin called me. He's like, have you seen the news? I was like, no, I just woke up. And he's like, this is bad, Val. Like, this is really, really bad. He's like, my mom said she's never seen anything like it. And I'm like, okay. And I looked at the news, and I was like, oh gosh. A week later, I was sitting in class, and Nader, the guy I was telling you about earlier that helped get me on this Palestinian team, called me. And, when he calls, I answer. Like, he's one of those people, he only calls me when he really needs me. And he called me, and I stepped out of class, and he said, hey, Val, that beach volleyball player from Gaza that you got really close with? And I was like, yeah, I do. And he's like, I'm really sorry to have to tell you this, but he passed away in a bombing a few hours ago. He just got back to Gaza a few days before October 7th. A few days. He had a little girl and a wife, and I, like, immediately I was like, okay, well, I'd go back to class. And right from class, I would go straight to the pool deck. And I walked on deck, and I don't know what, like, in that moment, it just hit. And I started crying, and my coach was like, whoa, like, what is wrong? Because I don't cry. Like I said, I just don't cry, especially on the pool deck. That's just not something I do. And I don't think I made a complete sentence when I explained what happened. And he's like, okay, Val, it's all the more reason you need to train harder, like, swim for him. And the other one was Tamer. And Tamer's actually, he's our track and field athlete. He's still in Gaza. I Snapchat him almost daily. He has an Instagram, and it's the most horrifying Instagram you'll see because it's all first-hand account. I tried to get him on some priority lists to get out. He's on a list, but they're not letting anyone out. Like, we can't do, there's nothing we can do with it. It's hard, especially to see someone that I was with one day and he's in a living hell another day. But it's just, honestly, it's insane to think about it. So when people say, like, oh, like, you're in America, like, this doesn't affect you, like, you don't really know your family over there. First of all, you want to know about family? Those people are my family. And second of all,
shut the fuck up, in other words.
Second of all, you want to talk about family? My family's sheltering in their church in Palestine, in Gaza. They were sheltering in a church that got bombed and they died. So I don't want to hear about how my family wasn't affected because the third oldest church in the world just got bombed and my family was in it. So I don't want to hear about that. So that's the only thing that really gets me fired up is when people are, this doesn't affect you because you live in America. This absolutely affects me every single day. So, something very cool is I remember when I heard our beach volleyball player passed away, I called our other swimmer, Yazin, and, he was close to him too, and we were crying on the phone, and I said, you know what, Yazin, when we go to the Olympics, we're going to raise our flag for him. And we're going to raise our flag for Tamer and the people in Gaza and all this stuff. And we raised our flag, and I FaceTimed Tamer when we were on the boat holding the flag. And that was a very special moment for us. Very shaky signal, but I think that gave him just a little bit of smile that day because what a special guy. I mean, the fact we got in contact with him was actually pretty cool because service was
it's wild, but it shows that there's there's some things that are just very serendipitous.
That was, by the way, when you went overseas with the Palestine team, that was the first time your parents ever traveled and watched you compete, correct?
Yeah, at the Olympics. They did everything, and I mean everything. They were called senators to get into Algeria to get a visa, and it was too short notice. So they didn't get to see me there. China, again, U.S. citizen. I had to travel on my Palestinian passport to get to China. World Championships, they just didn't go. Japan's super far, and so is Doha. So the Olympics is the first international competition. They never miss competition. Let's make that clear. They go to everything. They went to every college swim meet. So,
but this is different. This is not college. You're
know.
representing a country, and not any country. We're talking about Palestine.
Yeah. I taught my dad how to tie a kufiya on his head in the streets of Paris. That was a highlight of That was a highlight of my Olympics. Is I was literally like wrapping it on his head, like. Yeah.
That's incredible. I mean, look, you mentioned your grandfather passed away at the age of 1. I think what's so funny is that in our culture, there's all this pressure on like the youngest son of the youngest son to like make the grandfather proud. But goddamn, I'm sure your grandfather is fucking proud of you. I mean,
For sure.
you've done so much for our people, and you haven't even reached the peak of your career. And I think we spoke about this offline, and then hearing you actually go into detail of it, like it's remarkable, Valerie, and the fact that you pretty much by your own accord decided to really take this upon yourself and put yourself out there again in America where it's not popular to say you're Palestinian, and to do so with like such a positive attitude, and I believe that you still have so much more to do for Palestine. So I mean, I can't speak on behalf of all Palestinians, but from at least me and my family, Sam, thank you so much. It's honestly incredible to hear.
Well, thank you.
Definitely incredible. What's next for Valerie? I mean, what are you doing right now, Valerie?
Well,
Because I know you have
so this is what I wanted to get into next. I read a quote that I love, which is, time is the only currency we spend without knowing what the balance is. And you've mentioned already your insanely rigorous athletic schedule.
Mm-hmm.
You have a master's in human supply chain, but you're pursuing a PhD in the same topic. How do you live your life these days?
Yeah. Since the Olympics has been absolutely insane. So the crazy part is I came back after the Olympics with, I say no place to live in a light sense, but I had no housing in Auburn. I could go back and live in Chicago, but I wanted to be in Auburn because I wanted to train here, and my friends are here, and so I came back after the Olympics and I didn't have a place to live. I was actually crashing like in a spare room of someone and all this stuff. So it took me a little bit to get my feet on the ground. Just a few weeks of, I had to get in the pool and get in the weight room like right away because World Championships were only 3 months away. So back in Auburn, took me a few weeks to get settled and come off that Olympic high, and the Olympic blues are real. Oh my gosh.
Worse than Sunday Scaries?
Yeah, way worse.
Oh my gosh.
Because the Olympic blues don't go away the next day. So, you go from all the attention and all the media, and, I was living on a high for 6 weeks. And really, I say 6 weeks because that was training camp followed by the Olympics, but it was longer than that because I was in Hawaii 2 weeks with my family, came back to Auburn for a week to train, and then I went to Greece for the Young Olympic Ambassador Summit for an additional 2 weeks. I was in Auburn for 2 weeks, and then I was gone until, I was gone another 6 weeks. So I spent less than a month in Auburn that summer training with my coach. And it was insane because I was living this fake life. Like, I was with my family to rest a little bit, but train. And then all of a sudden, like, I was a young Olympic ambassador and met all these cool people and living this best life in Greece. And then next thing you know, like, I'm at the Olympics and spotlight's on me. Coolest thing in the whole world for sure. And so then it's the Olympics, and it's now what? And I could have started my PhD like now, but I decided to take this year off because all of these great opportunities just landed in my lap. And I say just landed, nothing happens by coincidence. Of course, like, I'd been working for stuff and putting myself in good positions, but I get a call one day and they're like, "Hey Val, you need to be in India." And I was like, "India?" They're like, "Yeah, there's like an Olympic Council Asia meeting." I was like, "Okay, like, when am I leaving?" He's like, "Next week, we'll call you later." So I was like, "Okay." Next thing you know, it's like 2 days later, and he's like, "Listen, Val, we couldn't get you signed up. Like, you're not going to India anymore." And I was like, "Oh, darn." Like, okay. That next week comes along. "Hey, Val, just so you know, you are now chair of the Gender Equity Committee for the Olympic Council of Asia. Congratulations." I was like, what?
By the way, you got to unpack that for us. What does that really mean?
Yeah, what does that entail?
Yeah, so the Olympic Council of Asia is essentially the governing body for all the countries in the continent of Asia. So there's 45 National Olympic Committees.
Okay.
I oversee gender equity, which means I create opportunities for women in sports. So this Olympics, they pride themselves on being 50-50 gender equal. My first week on the job, I had a call with the International Olympic Committee, and they said, we just want to let you know Asia is far behind every other continent, and you are far from 50-50, let alone the 30% recommendation. You are closer to 10 to 15% gender equity.
Wow.
This is across executive boards, officials, coaches, athletes, so on. So I have a very big job in front of me. We are working on creating opportunities for women, but more importantly, going to the heads of all these National Olympic Committees to have them understand why it's important to have women in sports. Because it's easy to say it, but what's the goal? How does this benefit them? How does this benefit women in general? So big task. It's a 4-year position. I'm very excited. And as a part of, I'm a chair on this. I'm also part of the executive board. So I get voting rights too when it comes down to it. And I just had a 1 a.m. Zoom call last night to discuss some things too. So really cool opportunity there. Let's fast forward. I get a phone call because that's how it always happens. It's always a phone call at like maybe 2-3 in the morning. That's how it always works for me. So
I feel like you've learned to just keep your phone on loud. Is that the one that's been dinging in the background this entire time?
Because, when the boss calls you, you answer. When Nader calls you, you answer. And then I never know who else is going to call me. So I get a phone call. Hey, Val, you want to go to Doha? Yeah, I would love to go to Doha. There's a soccer match. Would you like to come to the soccer match? Yeah, I would absolutely love to. Okay, you need to leave tomorrow.
Oh my
They
gosh.
play on Sunday. I was like,
Was this the Asia Cup?
No, this is the qualifier to qualify for the World Cup.
World Cup
The
qualifier.
windows.
So
Yeah.
I packed my bags and I got my ticket in the morning. My ticket was sent to me, and I flew 15 hours straight to Doha.
Wow.
And I landed, and gosh, that trip was something. One time I was sitting there, and all of a sudden they're like, "Okay, let's go." So I was like, "Okay." I'm assuming like, I'm assuming we're going back to the hotel. Next thing you know, I got like a translator in my ear, and I'm on live TV in Doha, talking about soccer.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, what? So my life has been a bit crazy. Really, really fun. I had the opportunity to go speak at Harvard and Northwestern for different events.
Amazing.
Just talking about Palestine, talking about my experience. I try and stray from politics, but it's kind of hard when people are dying. And I tell my story. I'm not here to point fingers, but I always tell my story about Tamer and Balil, our other coach, our track and field coach that passed away, pulling people out from the rubble. I always tell his story. And, of course, my family passed away in the church bombing. So this is firsthand accounts of things that are truly happening, not whatever people say is made up. I don't believe anything is made up. But I go around and I tell my story and how this affects me and how I choose to represent Palestine and how I choose to use my voice. And yeah. And then great last little thing here is I got my, just last week I was announced as a part of the executive board for the Palestinian-American Committee. So I also have.
Bravo. Great job. I'm proud of you.
Very excited. I think it's.
How do you do all this? Man, between everything that you do, is there anything you do to practice, to maintain mental health? Do you see a therapist? Do you believe in mental health to keep you happy, to keep you sane, keep you grounded?
Oh, I absolutely believe in mental health. Oh my gosh. I think my coach gave me this compliment, and I don't necessarily believe him, but you do a really great job compartmentalizing everything. And I was like, I do? And he's like, no, you do. He's like, when you're in the pool, you're very focused on what happens in the pool. And it's true. I do my best to leave everything off the pool deck. When I'm there to train, when I'm in the weight room, I'm set to train. But this is the least I can do. You know, my little bit of, oh, I'm busy. Oh, poor me. I have to fly to Portugal. Like, no, not poor me. This is the coolest thing in the whole world. I'm blessed with these opportunities. And
But any tips that you can give us that keep you sane, that keep you grounded
have your close
with everything?
have your close group of people. Have the people that are in your court. And it's not, everyone is not in your court. You have your friends, your family, you know, like I'm talking like 3 to 5 people. Your job is not to complain to the world, to complain to everyone. Like if you need an outlet, like these are the people supposed to be there to support you in everything you do. And, you know, I say it, I have the best coach in the world because I know that I can go into his office and if I need to sit there and, can you believe what the Palestinian Olympic Committee did? I can't believe, like, he doesn't care. Like, he laughs. And, like, that's my outlet. But as long as it's not carrying into my swimming, like, I can complain about my dad to my coach and he wouldn't care.
I love it.
But, you know, vice versa. My parents are the most supportive people ever. I talk to them every single day, multiple times a day. So have those people in your court. It's super important. But don't.
Do you feel some athletes are reaching out to you for that kind of support? And are you able to be that person for them?
I've had a few athletes reach out to me. I actually make it a point to try and reach out to the Palestinian athletes. I just learned about one of our soccer players. She's our goalie on our night.
We got that phone again. Sorry.
It's so funny, dude. Honestly, I kept thinking it was Sam. I'm like, Sam should know better to have his phone on that.
You know, my phone been on silent for the past probably 7 years. I don't even know how it sounds.
That's so funny. Wait, but okay, you mentioned this.
Sorry, go ahead.
You mentioned the female football player.
Yeah, I keep trying to put this on.
No, it's fine. It's fine. We got one question
okay.
up anyway. You're good. You never know if Tamer's gonna call, so keep that phone on fucking loud.
Tamer.
Okay, so like I said, I try and reach out to Palestinian athletes in general. One, with this new position on the board, I need to have contacts. I need to be in contact with athletes. There needs to be someone to bridge that gap. And I feel like I'm actually a great person to bridge that gap because I am an athlete, but I'm also now on the admin side of a lot of different things and organizations. So I get both worlds. But I read an article about one of our female soccer players. She's on the 19 and under team. She's from Canada. And one of her quotes was, I'm not ashamed to say I'm Palestinian. Like, I'm a proud Palestinian, and anyone that doesn't support that, I don't want to be around them anyways. And I was like, this is my girl. Okay. And I reached out to her, and I was like, I'm so proud of you, this, and this. And just on Instagram, and she was like, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe you reached out. Just know that our whole 19 under team was cheering you on the whole Olympics. And I was like, I didn't even know that our soccer team knew who I was.
That's amazing.
And that was like a very heartwarming thing. But we have some great athletes that are really, you know, doing great things and that are making waves for our country. You know, we fight for our country through sport. I say that all the time. Our way of fighting is to bring recognition to Palestine, and that's what we're doing. We train hard so we can do well and bring success, and until that helps our country.
And again, I want to stress that it starts with sports, but it goes well beyond that in this day and age. That anything, whether it's content creation, whether it's cooking, whether it's writing books, like I think we all have such and driven by people like you at the top, by the way, but we all have such an obligation and such a desire now to make sure that what's been, you know, broadcasted for the last 15 months, but what's been the reality for the last, you know, 80 years is not the view of Palestine, and it's not the impact that Palestine will have on this world, right? All of our grandparents are born and raised there, and it's our job to make sure their stories are shared. So we've gone well over the amount of time we're supposed to. My computer's literally about to die, but we do have 3 questions we ask every guest at the end of these conversations. So we're going to kick off with those, and then we're going to wrap up for the day. Sam, why don't you go ahead?
If you can be in a room with everybody you've ever met, who would you gravitate to and why?
I'll gravitate to. I thought we were going to say.
We already know who it is. He's coaching a big program.
Who I gravitate to?
Yeah, and why?
Well, I think my family for sure. If we go really deep into this question, my grandfather was alive when I was a year old, so technically I have met him. So I would. That like goes to like if you could sit down and have dinner with one person. I want to sit down and talk to my grandfather. Like I feel like there's so many unanswered questions that, and plus I think he'd be so proud. I think about him all the time when I compete and raise the flag for Palestine because
Love it.
Yeah.
We don't need to think that he's proud. He's definitely proud.
For sure.
As someone who could be very easily defined by what she does, because you do so much, what does the word identity mean to you?
Sorry, repeat the question.
So as someone who could easily be defined purely as like what she does by what you do,
Yeah.
because you do so many different things, what does the word identity mean to you?
Ooh. I actually just made this joke to my roommate earlier is some people are like, don't let the Olympics define you. Like, you're not just an Olympian. No, I'm not just an Olympian. I'm not just a swimmer. But it definitely shaped me in who I am. It gave me so much. It's given me life skills that I can, if I were to say, forget sports, forget all the admin stuff that I've been doing, forget, the Olympic Council, Asia, all this, if I were to forget all of it and I were to just go into the business world, all of those skills I learned from sports and all my life experiences would translate directly into being successful in other places in my life. And I give that all to sports. It's given me so much. It's given me friends, friendships, and I think sports is not who I am, but it's helped shape me into who I am today.
That's amazing.
My last question to you. What does Palestine means to you?
It's everything. And there's no words to describe it because unless you're there and you're Palestinian and, you walk into Jerusalem the first time or you walk the old city of Ramallah and have that opportunity to just look around and experience the culture and the people don't understand that. There's a feeling. It's home. And yes, I was born and raised in America, but home is Palestine. And people will never understand that unless you're in that position. Yeah.
Home is Palestine. I love that.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
What makes me most excited, Valerie, is not that you get this platform now to tell everyone your story. It's that you still have so much more that you're going to accomplish, and we're going to bring you back on again, and we're going to talk about monitoring progress and all the whiteboards you've written from now until then.
Right.
But genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, you're the first person that we have actively asked a separate guest to get on. We've been following you for a long time. We've been inspired by you for a long time. We're both fangirling right now. And again, just want to say thank you so much, not only for joining us and for sharing your story, but for everything you do for Palestine and for everything you're going to continue to do in the future.
Well, thank you. Again, it's the least I can do.
Thank you, Valerie. Thank you to an Olympian. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to us on YouTube and all podcasting apps.
And make sure you follow us on all the social media apps. Another one in the books, baby. Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.